Welcome to episode 69 of Sport SA Daily Diary. Today we're chatting to the voice behind years of South African rugby, Hugh Bladen.
Okay.
Good morning, Hugh. How are you doing today?
I'm good, thanks, Adam. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well, thank you. Thank you for joining me on your very first Zoom session.
It's a pleasure.
Hugh, you have been the voice
pleasure
of...
and a bit nerve-wracking, as I said to you.
Well, I'm glad I'm the first one to have got you to use Zoom.
I'm worried about that background picture.
You don't like it?
Caricature.
I think it's a superb one.
Oh, good. Okay. As long as you like it.
Hugh, you've been the voice of South African rugby since 1976. But let's go a little bit further back than that. Were you always a rugby fan and player and stuff growing up at school?
Yeah, well, we played soccer at prep school. And then I was in a strange situation in that my mum and her best friend were both divorced, and they started a business and ran the business from a home that we lived in. And I basically acquired a stepbrother and stepsister at the age of about 9 or 10. And the stepbrother went off to St. Andrews in Grahamstown. When he came back on holiday, he was full of the whole rugby thing. And so we played quite a lot of sort of rugby on the little lawn that we had. And I got interested in rugby, and he taught me how to scrum and things like that. And so I sort of, got interested in rugby through this fellow Keith Hall. But I mean, I loved playing soccer at prep school. And then when we got to high school, I felt I had a bit of a grounding. And, when the master, the poor master in charge of under 13s calls a practice and 80 guys arrive and they all know how to play soccer but haven't got a clue how to play rugby. I felt that I had a slight advantage in that I was standing in a centre position and basically knew what was going on.
Yeah. Well, I think you're being slightly modest there. You said you liked playing soccer, but you were actually first team soccer. You were first team cricket captain, and you were Victrix Ladorum in athletics. I mean, you were certainly the sportsman of sportsmen at that age, huh?
Yeah, Adam, life is a strange thing, I think, when it comes to ball games. I did a lot of coaching in years later after my rugby career. And I believe you are born with ball skill. And, if you're not born with it and you're very, very, very determined, you can develop it. But there's no question that certain kids are born with the ability to catch a ball. And I was one of those lucky ones, right from an early age, I was able to catch a ball. And in a way, I mean, my mom first realized I could run when I won a under 7 beach race at Yuvonga Beach when we were on holiday.
Sure. Okay. And then sort of take us through your high school. You're one that could play rugby. Did you excel sort of right from the offset? Were you in the A team and first team and all of that kind of thing?
I was lucky. Yeah, I played under 13A, both cricket and rugby, and right through the age groups. And after under 14 of cricket, you then go into open. So I went straight from the under 14 side into the second team, and then had 3 years in the first 11, and 2 years in the first 15.
As a centre?
I started playing centre. I was a boarder for my first year at school. In the under-13s, we were unbeaten, and I played centre next to a very, very strong lad by the name of Willie Wilson, who went on to win the South African 100 yards freestyle championship. And I played next to him, and then I was a little blonde fella and didn't grow. And so I got knocked over playing in the centre, so that my master moved me to fullback. So I had a season at fullback in the under-15s.
I must say, when I played rugby at school, I played fullback as well, and I found it a really freeing position. You really do have a lot of freedom in terms of the ability to catch the ball, run, move around. Did you enjoy it as well, or did you prefer your centre position?
No, I enjoyed playing. In fact, my first year in the first 15 was at fullback. And, I enjoyed the fullback position. I'm not sure that I was a great runner in terms of coming into the back line and that type of thing. But, I enjoyed playing fullback.
And then from school, where did you go from there? Did you continue to play in your rugby career? I know you were in the first team at Wanderers from 1964 to 1971. Where did you, what happened after school?
Basically, when I matriculated, I'd been playing cricket for Old Edwardians since the age of 14. They used to get the sort of second team and the youngsters coming up playing on the Sunday Thirsty Thirds. And our thirst was quenched by a sort of passion fruit and water. But the older guys were quite thirsty. The older boys, most of them sort of retired first league players, but it was a great grounding to play. So when I left school, I'd been playing for Old Eds for a couple of years. And I shortly after leaving school, around about January, February, I was chosen in the Old Edwardian first cricket team. Okay. And was playing cricket until a mate of mine, a rugby playing schoolmate of mine, phoned me and said, a group of us are going to join Wanderers in the under-20s. Why don't you come and play rugby? And I said, well, hold on a second, I'm still playing cricket. So when I'd finished the cricket season, I then went and joined them at Wanderers. And, we had a super under-20 side. And in those days, you either, you either got a job or you went to the army or you went to Damlin. Yeah. And so I had a job and joined at under-20 and remained with Wanderers for many years thereafter.
Okay. Oh, that's awesome. And Hugh, tell us, obviously TV came into South Africa in 1976. It was also the year I was born. How did you get into commentating?
When I was relatively, in fact, at the age of about 21, I was voted in as captain of the first 15 at Wanderers. And as such, had to sit in the very boring committee meetings. And our chairman was a wonderful, wonderful guy by the name of Chick Henderson, who was just, in fact, he became my mentor in terms of broadcasting. Chick was a great mate of Charles Fortune's and was already in the broadcasting business, albeit on a part-time basis. And we had a committee meeting. He said, we're having our annual dinner and we need a master of ceremonies. And everybody sort of looked around the table and looked at one another. And eventually I said, okay, I'll do it. I'm available. And so sort of from the, Chick then realized I was reasonably comfortable behind a microphone. Yeah. And when television started, he was big mates with Kim Shippey, who was manager of English-speaking sport. There were two very definite divides, English-speaking and Afrikaans-speaking divisions.
Yeah.
And Chick obviously tipped Kim off because Kim had said, oh, I'm looking for an English-speaking person who's played provincial rugby. And I think Chick gave Kim my name. Kim phoned me up and said, are you interested? I'd never thought about commentating at all. I said, okay, yeah, you know, I'd be, sounds like quite fun.
Yeah.
He said, good. On Saturday, the All Blacks are playing Transvaal, you're in. But you know, so he was the commentator and I was the comments man. Needless to say, extremely nervous.
I'm sure. Jeepers, thrown right in the deep end against the All Blacks in your first game. That's quite something.
Well, you know, I always say, Adam, that I looking back, in fact, I was really in the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Because, you know, these days guys have to go for interviews and auditions and kick and shove and scratch to become commentators. And, you know, I was just very lucky that I was invited to do the job.
Well, yeah, I think an element of luck, but you certainly made the position your own, and you really became known as the voice of rugby in South Africa. Hugh, it's obviously not just talking about rugby. You obviously need to know the game very well. You need to know the laws, the rules, all that kind of thing. Do you have to constantly be updated in terms of the changing rules in the game to know what you're actually having to talk about?
Yeah, you know, I studied the law over the years. I've studied the laws. I'm also have been quite friendly, well, very friendly with Jonathan Kaplan and with Andre Watson. And when something over the years has sort of occurred on field, I've phoned one or two other of them, and they've kindly sort of explained things to me. One can, you know, the latest laws are on computer. I told you I'm a spastic on computer, but I'm quite good at looking up the rugby laws. And so, yeah, you know, if you want to be, if you're going to commentate, quite obviously you have to study the laws.
Yeah. And I mean, Hugh, you must have to study the players and details around the players. I mean, it's obviously not just, okay, let me rock up on a Saturday afternoon and talk about a rugby match. You really probably need to do your homework quite extensively to know all of the players, their positions, you know, what they've done in their history, etc., etc.
Yeah, you know, it does. It takes a lot of preparation. In terms of provincial rugby, super rugby, and test match rugby, I would prepare for some hours, looking up either computerized records that the South African Rugby Board put out on player profiles, on the South African Rugby Annual, or just looking up, you know, on the whatever avenue you can look up and find players. And then they've also, SuperSport provide a stats service where for the bigger games, where they show how many games the guy's played, how many tries he scored, that type of thing. So you take that all off the computer, and I transcribe it onto my own team sheets.
Yeah.
When you do, you know, there have been occasions in my commentating life when we do schools rugby, Easter weekends, do 6 games a day and get the team sheets 10 minutes before kickoff. There one does quite a lot of anticipating where you know, one very quickly, and I think it is, Adam, experience that comes into it. One moves one's fingers up and down the team sheet. So when the ball is in the air, you know, if, for instance, the fly half kicks the ball, when the ball is in the air, you're looking down at your team sheet to see who the fullback is. So quite a lot of anticipation comes into it. And then quite quickly you learn the vital phase, the hookers' names on both sides, the halfbacks, you know, the inside centre. Very often the ball doesn't get much past the inside centre. So, you know, and that's how one does it. You learn to anticipate who's going to receive the ball.
It's yeah, I mean, as you said, it's a lot of anticipation to be done, but there's a fair bit of skill that you need to know of the game to anticipate where it's actually going to go, because it could quite easily go the opposite direction.
Yeah, but more often than not, you find very rarely is a ball heeled against the scrum. And more often than not, with the latest line-out laws where lifting is allowed and that type of thing, the side throwing in the ball are more than likely to gain possession of the ball. So as the line-out is forming, you quickly look down at the locks names, you've by now, if you're 5-10 minutes into the game, you understand that the number 4 lock's got a yellow scrum cap and number 5's got a black scrum cap and a knee guard on his left knee, or he's got pink boots, or the other guy's got white boots. And so, one quickly sort of picks that sort of detail up.
Yeah. And I mean, Hugh, you've been, as mentioned, you've been commentating on the game since 1976. The rules have changed quite extensively in rugby. Do you think they've changed for the better or for the worse? Because to me, it's becoming a bit of a kicking game. Slowly teams like the Lions and those sorts of teams have started to bring running back into the game. But do you think the game has changed for the good or for the worse?
Oh, it's a very interesting question, because I've sort of guys my age saying rugby isn't like it was in our day and that type of thing. Let me start off by saying the professional era and the players that play today are far more skillful. Yeah. They're far bigger. They are probably quicker. And I always say that if the current Lions team had to play the team that I played in my final year playing for Transvaal in 1971, they'd probably give us 70 points.
But playing a different game.
Different game. They certainly are far, far bigger. Just as a matter of interest, they did a survey, and 2 years ago, they did a comparison between the SA Schools team and the Springbok team that was chosen in 1992 to play the All Blacks when we came back into international rugby. And the SA Schools side, man for man, apart from Robert du Preez, who was the scrum half in that 1992 game, and he was a big scrum half, every player was bigger than his counterpart in the Springbok side. So it was just indicative of how much bigger the kids have got. And, they obviously they train far longer hours and that type of thing. I think that the laws, in a way, when it comes to breakdown and that type of thing, when it comes to the scrum laws, I think very often you do have a situation where if it's not obvious, the referee can be guessing, which is not a great thing. And I think the laws have become a little bit overcomplicated. Now they've got to a situation where they are dishing out red cards and yellow cards and referring to TMOs far too often. And quite frankly, if I'm running at you, now you're the fullback, I'm the fly half, and I'm running at you and we're at close quarters and you've lined me up and I duck, where are you going to go?
Of course.
You're going to either go into my neck or my head. And so, the law has become ridiculous. If it's a blatant straight arm or stiff arm tackle, fine. But when a guy slips or there is a situation where a bloke ducks into a tackle, very often, I've seen situations where the referee then blows his whistle, they refer to the TMO, the other guy gets a yellow card or a red card. In my opinion, that is ridiculous.
I mean, I completely agree with you in the red card. I mean, I think if you look at a red card in football, and you look at a red card in rugby, it's that you actually can't compare the two. I think if a team goes down essentially to 14 men in rugby for a good portion of the game, that's pretty much the result decided. I remember I think it was the Lions against the Crusaders in the Super Rugby final a few years ago, and Kwagga Smith got sent off quite early. That changed the game. After that, there was no chance the Lions could win that game. And I think
I remember that, yeah.
Yeah, I think rugby needs to revisit the red card instead of maybe having a card where the guy gets off for 10 minutes or whatever, and he can't come back on, but you can replace him with somebody else. Because I think going back down to 14 men is just ridiculous.
Yeah, no, you're quite right. Absolutely.
Hugh, you've traveled with the Springboks extensively. France, England, Australia, Argentina, New Zealand, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, Italy, probably a lot more. And you've been with the Springboks a lot. What is your favorite memory of the Springboks to date?
My favorite memory is a few of them. Being in a bar with them in Argentina some years ago with Dick Muir, and basically the whole Springbok side before professionalism came in back in 1993. From a commentating point of view, people ask me, maybe my finest moment was without doubt commentating our country winning the World Cup in 2007. It was some degrees above the next best highlight that I ever had to actually broadcast and commentate your country winning the World Cup was a huge privilege.
Yeah. And of those three teams, if you look at 95, 2007, and now 2019, which team do you think was the strongest of those three?
2007.
Really? Okay. And
Adam, my 95 mates will say you're talking rubbish, and the 2019 guys will say what a whole lot of rubbish. I think that the 95 and the 2019 wins were brilliant team efforts. When you go back to 2007, I'm not taking away from the team effort, but we had Oosterand, probably the best loose head in the world. John Smith, probably the best thrower in and captain in the world, the best lock combination in the world, the best loose forward combination in the world, the best scrum half in the world. Percy kicked 17 out of 17 at the Stade de France. Brian Habana broke the try-scoring record. Jacques Ferry became one of the top centres in world rugby, and Butch James just had a revelation in terms of his tournament. So it was a very, very, very powerful side that one might say we played England in a tight game in the final. Don't forget we'd beaten them 36-0 in the round robin games.
yeah.
So, to me, it was an extraordinarily powerful side with a huge amount of experience. I mean, only Frans Steyn came in at the last moment because Jean de Villiers got injured, but all the others had probably 45 tests and more per player. They'd all been there in 2003 in Australia as youngsters with very, very little experience, but all went into 2007 as a really highly experienced team.
Yeah. And Hugh, you chat about John Smith as captain. If you look at the three captains that have won the World Cup, they may not have been the most outstandingly brilliant players, but they were captains beyond captains. I mean, if you look at the three of Francois Pienaar, John Smith, and Siya Kolisi, really probably massively impactful captains. Do you think that role of captain is almost equally as important as being a player? So almost having a 16th player on the team?
Well, if you take that player as a captain, I think they were all very solid players. And, their captaincy was outstanding. All three of them have done a brilliant job. some people say to me over the years, people have said to me, who should be captain of the Springbok side? I said, well, pick your team and then pick a captain. Yeah. I wouldn't pick a captain and then pick my team around that captain. Your captain, I believe, has got to be a player who deserves his position in the team. And all three of our captains, I have no doubt, have deserved their position in the team. Yeah. And that said, they've all done great jobs as captaining a World Cup winning team.
And just before we close, we've got something special in closing, but just before we get there, a little bit of a difficult question. In your commentating years, who's been the best player that you've seen on a rugby field?
Adam, that's an unanswered question. I'll tell you why. And I am not a great fan of man of the match, because every player has a totally different role to play. A fly half can't scrum. A front row player can't play fly half. Most of the guys in the team can't kick as accurately as a place kicker as the assigned place kicker. A wing would battle to play scrum half and position himself. So there are so many different aspects of play in rugby that you might say to me, who's your best player or your favorite player in every position? And that would take another hour and a half. So, yeah, I have great respect for everybody who dons a rugby jersey. And there have been, you don't play for South Africa without having competitive spirit, a huge amount of talent, and a will to win.
Yeah. Well, that's a very diplomatic answer, but very, very true, I suppose. It's very difficult to compare a scrum half to a 8th man or a flank. In closing, Hugh, just the favor of commentating the winning try at the 2019 Rugby World Cup final, please, in your own special words.
Oi, Adam, I would have to. And South Africa win the ball, and it comes back to Peter Steph-Toy, who's making a little bit of the ground. Fine space for Chisholm Colby. Colby, what a sidestep inside Farrell. And Colby scores! Unbelievable.
Excellent, Hugh. That was absolutely magic. Thank you so much. It's been great chatting to you on Sport SA Daily Diary. Take care of yourself, and we really hope to hear you back on TV again soon, commentating on hopefully some live rugby.
Let's hope so, Adam. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugh. Be sure not to miss tomorrow's episode of Sport SA Daily Diary, where we'll be chatting to the lady who smashed the Comrades Marathon record, Gerda Steyn.